As we complete our second week of Have a Wonderful Day in the Lord, we have to go to Lamentations chapter 3. Now, if you are not familiar with Lamentations, you can listen or you can go there with me. It's a wonderful book of the Bible, especially the section we're going to read right now. Chapter 3 is perhaps the best known passage in all the scriptures dealing with the morning and the blessedness of the morning with the Lord. So I think it's only right that we read it together and make a few comments here as we conclude our second week together in the morning. Lamentations 3, I think I'll pick it up at verse 17, where we find the prophet Jeremiah extremely depressed over the circumstances of his life, and you would be too over the devastation that he's facing. He said, "My soul has been rejected from peace, I have forgotten happiness. So I say, my strength has perished, and so has my hope from the Lord. Remember my affliction and my wandering, the wormwood and bitterness. Surely my soul remembers and is bowed down within me." So as we come to that stopping point in this particular chapter, we find a very depressed man of God. Now, there's no question Jeremiah was a man of God, a faithful servant, a faithful prophet. He has ministered for up to half a century to a people that do not want to hear what God has to say. And the consequences have come now. The people are losing everything, and Jeremiah, unfortunately, is collateral damage. And so no wonder he is so depressed. He says here, "My strength is perished, and even my hope in the Lord." He is really struggling spiritually even because of all of this, and we can understand why. But there's a change here in verse 21. We might call this the hinge verse in this particular section of Scripture. He says in verse 21, "This I recall to my mind, and therefore I have hope." As his mind shifts from thinking about the devastation around him to something else, he now begins to think differently and feel differently. He now has hope. Now, what is it that he is shifting his thinking to? Now, we know what he's shifting from the devastation of the world around him, but what is he shifting his attention to? And this is these wonderful and precious verses that so many of us have memorized and love. Verse 22 says this, "For the Lord's loving kindnesses indeed never cease, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness." So once again, as we talked about yesterday, we have the Lord's loving kindness here, his mercy, his love, his care over us. And they never cease, he says. They never cease. His compassions, they never fail. The Lord never lets us down. And then he says this, "For they're new every morning, and great is your faithfulness." Every morning as we wake up, every morning as we turn to the Lord himself, we are renewed and refreshed with the realization that he is always faithful, he's always compassionate, his loving kindness is always there, he never lets us down. And even though Jeremiah has been going through this terribly difficult time of life, as he comes to the Lord in the morning, he realizes that the Lord has not gone away, and neither has he changed. His faithfulness is there. He moves on in verse 24 to say, "The Lord is my portion, says my soul, therefore I have hope in him." I like that word portion. It kind of reminds me of eating. Here's a portion of food. And he says, "My portion is the Lord." Wow, what a beautiful thing to say. "And therefore I have hope in him." Verse 25, "The Lord is good, and those who wait for him, to the person who seeks him, the Lord is good and does good," as we saw earlier in one of our Psalms. And so in the morning, Jeremiah wakes up to look around him at a world that has fallen apart as far as he's concerned. The world of Israel is just destroyed. And everything Jeremiah has known and loved and cared for pretty much his whole life has crumbled with it. And so he would be in despair, and he struggles with despair for quite some time until in the morning he wakes up and he looks and he realizes that God hasn't changed. God is still good to those who love him. God will always be good to them. God is always faithful. God is always full of loving kindness. God's compassions never fail. They're new every morning. That's pretty much our theme of getting together in the mornings with this particular broadcast, that we can remember that every morning he is faithful. His loving kindnesses never fail. They're always there for you and I. I trust that you'll have a wonderful day in the Lord today.